When I decided to develop my first game, I wanted to start simple. I wanted to avoid level design, pacing, storytelling, art, and put more focus into the aspects of game design that came easier to me. I know, excluding all those things doesn't leave much, but I really felt that with my engineering background and my basic understanding of what makes a game fun, I could make something that at least a couple of my friends would enjoy. My plan was to make a score-based minigame in the likes of Temple Run or Flappy Bird where you just try to survive as long as you can. The result was Pizza Frenzy, a game that I released on itch.io back in June. You play as the delivery person for the only pizza shop on your tiny planet, and your only goal is to not miss an order. It was far from perfect, but everyone starts somewhere, and 6 months later, I wanted to take some time to reflect on the most important lessons I learned through making this game. Pizza Frenzy taught me that making games is like putting a puzzle together, but each puzzle piece keeps breaking down into more and more pieces while you're trying to build it. That probably doesn't make much sense, but let me explain. One of my favorite games growing up was Super Mario Galaxy. The core of the game involved traveling between planets to collect stars and face enemies. The best part of the game for me though was being able to walk on surfaces of all shapes, sizes, and orientations. The game manipulated gravity in a way that made the simplest of movements really enjoyable. I wanted Pizza Frenzy to be played on a planet similar to the ones found in Super Mario Galaxy, which required me to implement player movement on a spherical surface. I quickly learned how difficult it was to get that type of movement to not only work, but to feel right. Even after getting the car to not fly off the planet at high speeds, I still felt dizzy driving it around. When I released the game, I was by no means satisfied with the movement, but I knew it was the best I was going to get at the time without driving myself crazy trying to perfect it. Pizza Frenzy taught me that something as small and seemingly trivial as player movement can be so complex. The camera work, the input response, and the animation involved are just pieces of the puzzle that make the movement work so well in Super Mario Galaxy. And movement is just one small piece of an even greater puzzle. Making my first game also taught me how to keep projects in scope. At first, I wanted to make a game involving space battles and dogfights on and around spherical planets, which seemed like a fun idea, but I needed to consider how much time I would actually want to spend on my first game. I had to factor in the time it would take to learn basic 3D modeling and the basics of Unity on top of having to make the actual game itself. This is when I decided I wanted to make a score-based minigame, and I decided that I wanted to do so within a 4-week time frame. This required me to visualize the course of the project from the very beginning and to plan out how long each of the subtasks would take. If I didn't do this, I definitely would have found myself 3 weeks into making a game far too complicated to finish in a month. It's very common to want to quit working on a game in search of a better idea, but working hard on the front end to outline the steps and the time needed to complete your game helps to prevent that. This takes me to my next point. Finishing and putting out a game is crucial for your improvement as a developer. I wasn't 100% satisfied with Pizza Frenzy when I put it out, and that's completely okay. I got a bit tired of working on it and didn't like the idea as much as I did when I started. I was tempted many times to scrap it and start something else. But if I were to do that, it's pretty likely that I would have just quit my next attempt too, no matter how good that next idea might have been. I pushed through the final stages of making this game. Not necessarily out of enjoyment, but out of discipline and out of wanting to set a good precedent for myself. The result was extremely rewarding, and getting feedback on the game really helped me to learn what I could have done better. The reality is, you'll get a lot more out of finishing a mediocre game than ditching it for what you deem to be a better idea, because you probably need the experience of finishing your mediocre game to be able to make a better one. This game also taught me how important playtesting is. It's probably one of the most important aspects of game development, if not the most important, and I didn't do any of it. I was the only one who played the game prior to release, and when I did release it, everyone told me that the steering was so hard it was almost unplayable. And of course, I didn't notice this because I was playing the game every day while developing it and just got used to the bad controls. Coming from an engineering background, I lived by the idea that if it works, I did well. But games have to work, entertain, and be player friendly. For a silly itch.io game, this doesn't really matter, but before my first commercial release, I'll definitely be doing a lot of playtesting cycles. Pizza Frenzy was, and still is, a bit of a mess. Let's be real. But it was so much fun to make, and the lessons learned along the way will be valuable in whatever games, apps, or experiences I develop in the future. I have no idea how many games I'll end up making in my lifetime, but I do know one thing for certain. Pizza Frenzy will always be my first, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Slow it down to a medium groove.